Hi, this is Shauna. Before we get to today's guest, I want to take a minute to learn more about you, the listener. We've put together a short survey at fueltalent.com/podcast to gather information on who's listening and to give you a chance to make suggestions and comments about the show. I want What Fuels You to be a great resource for you and your interests, and I hope these interviews give you practical advice along with inspiration for your career and life. Help us continue to serve you better by going to fueltalent.com/podcast. Thank you so much. Now let's start today's show. Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Tom Skerritt. Tom is the co-founder and chief creative officer of Triple Squirrels, a Pacific Northwest lifestyle-focused media content provider. Tom has led a successful career as an actor, being a 2-time Golden Globe nominee and Emmy Award winner for lead actor in a drama series. In a 60-year acting career, Tom has appeared in more than 40 films and over 200 television episodes, including roles in classics such as MASH, War Hunt, Alien, Steel Magnolias, Top Gun, A River Runs Through It, and Picket Fences. After Tom graduated high school, he enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, then continued to UCLA, where he began his storytelling and acting career. Originally from Detroit, Tom now resides in Seattle with his wife, Julie, who he co-founded Triple Squirrels with just prior to the COVID pandemic. In his free time, you can find Tom working on his memoir and 2 new screenplays. Welcome, Tom. I am beyond excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me into your beautiful looking place there.
Well, thank you. Okay, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, what's your favorite movie? It's a tough question.
It is a tough one because I keep going back to Citizen One. Citizen Kane is the one that really just spawned all this when I was in college. And I saw that and I said, I want to write and work to that level.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
I'm curious, given the pandemic, we've all been inside, and now luckily we get to kind of be outside and get back to the real world. But what have you read or listened to or watched over this past year or two that you find yourself kind of coming back to and recommending?
I don't watch much television to begin with. And with COVID, I was given some opportunity to really knuckle down and do these 3 different projects that I have been working on. One, I think the imagination thing is over there on the shelf now. I have to go over it when I get more objective. But as far as what I've seen, I love the film last year, for example, called the Truffle Hunters. Italian movie. Did you ever hear of that?
I have not heard of it. Tell me it again. I'm going to write it down.
The Truffle Hunters.
The Truffle. Oh, I have heard of this. Yes. I have heard of this. My husband watched it, but I never watched it. He loved it.
I've seen it over and over again. It's just genius. And nobody paid much attention to it in this country. But it's just basically a quasi-documentary. Real people who have worked for years learning how to be a good truffle hunter, and their dogs that know where to go. And
yes,
it just, I can't describe it. The exquisite cinematography of it.
Yeah.
The composition, the lighting, it's all natural and real.
I love it. I'm writing myself a note. I'm going to watch The Truffle Hunters. I'm going on a plane tomorrow, so I'm going to download it. And then I'm going to rewatch Citizen Kane because I haven't watched that in years. So I'm excited. Okay. So I'm guessing, obviously, you already are a famous everything. You're like my most famous person I've had on the podcast, but I'm giving you other options that you get to choose either a rock star or athlete or CEO or, like novelist. Which would you choose?
All of them. The celebrity thing is not something I really, I'm not drawn to that part of all of this stuff, all of this conversation, but what I have picked up from other people, from the best of them back in the 60s and 70s, that I just happened to know before they became really famous. And they were really the people that taught me everything about how to encompass a film, how you make these things, how you put them all together with the crew and the cast and everybody that knows what they're doing in that room and that soundstage. So it's never anything one about it, just acting. The acting is moved by your outside influences. And I don't know if I'm answering your question because I go off on things like this. They're all connected.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pick out on one thing or another. I'm a better director than I am an actor. And but I have kids and grandchildren, even a great granddaughter. So those have been my first priority always. And
you've got 4 kids, right? 5 kids.
Yes. The last is adopted.
Yeah. Oh, I did read that. Yeah, that's a lot of kids. How many grandkids do you have?
5.
Wow.
Gorgeous granddaughters, all grown up now.
Oh, you have to send me after we hang up. You'll have to send me pictures.
Okay.
My husband thinks I'm crazy because I just turned 50, and my kids are 12, 15, and 17, and I keep saying I can't wait to be a grandma. I just think it sounds really fun, just to be like only spoil them and not worry about all the discipline and the kind of nagging stuff that comes with parenthood. Yeah.
Well, mothers are something else again. I think women should be running the country and running businesses, by and large. And you just take care of everything.
Yeah, we do. It is absolutely true.
You know how to love, you know how to be, you know what the meaning of meaning is, and men with their egos, with our egos that we have continually have to allow that the women seem to put things together better than we do.
Not on all things, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you recognize that as a man, and also generationally, right? Like you've been through so much in your lifetime of seeing women and equality and the growth of the women's movement. So it's incredible. I'm sure that you've recognized that for years. So you're progressive. I
don't think I've ever really been able to verbalize it. It's a lot of stuff that you have to feel first before you can describe it. It's like the Mona Lisa painting. Why is it so famous? And my theory is that it just she has a little smile, or is it a smirk? It's the mystery of everything that really draws us in. Those things we want to know about. Right. Best movies are that way.
It's true. I'm curious. I'm already sensing you have a lot of superpowers, but what have you been told consistently, or what do you feel is your superpower?
My wife, Julie.
No, your superpower, like your ability to XYZ.
Well, Julie's remarkable. She's tough. Does not let down. She will work all day, and I don't know which. I think if there's a fairy god, if that's real, fairy godmother or fairy angel, she's it. Oh. She just is. But nobody ever really said that there's a menu on the mood of a person, And I think the age and the life that I've lived just gives me this deep love for her in a way that I don't think I would have had 30 years ago. Yeah. She and I have been together 27 years now. So she's something quite remarkable, quite deep about her. And it's only that I'm older and I've been able to put this all this wonderful stuff into one splendid cheesecake with a little zest. And a little cherry on top. Yeah, quite a life that you've built. And so is there some sort of
referenceable or kind of something you think about when you think of a quote that you like to live by?
Oh God, there's a whole book of them. It's a lot of. I love a lot of Mark Twain and Will Rogers and even Da Vinci said some nice things. I remember one offhand. I was looking at a picture I have here over my desk of fishing. I haven't been able to fly fish for many years, but I love that. And he said that you just put your hand into flowing river and you can feel the past, the present, and the future run through your fingers. That one that's how I feel. What I'm trying to describe to you is that is what you come to at some point in your life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And is there, this is like me selfishly asking because I realize 50 is young, but it's also from some perspective, going into middle age, and you look and your energy, your vibe is so vibrant. And I'm curious, like, how you eat. Like, do you have a certain diet or a regimen around how you take care of your body?
I think instinctively I've had that. I've seen other people, relatives when I was a kid, who just kind of ate a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And, it was all to occur to me, a lot of canned food is not the best thing for you. I mean, when I was a kid, it was a whole different world as far as vegetables. And I didn't get many really fresh vegetables until I left, until I left Detroit and moved out to California and found all those wonderful fresh vegetables and the great wine that was available. It was just an entirely different world for me. I was 21, 22 when I went to UCLA. I went into the service right out of high school in Detroit for 4 years. And I had a GI Bill and I couldn't help it. Somehow or other managed to get into college, and UCLA is where I went.
I want to hear more about it. I have one last question. Do you prefer, if you're going to go on vacation, do you prefer to be in the mountains or near the ocean?
Oh God, both of them.
Right? That's a tough one.
Energy, there are mountains, right? We have mountains. Look out here, we've got mountains on the other side of the lake. And over there, we've got the Olympic Peninsula, which is just surrounded by water.
Yeah, we're lucky in Seattle.
Yeah, it's all creative input. And I don't think the people who live here understand that necessarily. They take it for granted. But I think the creative process is not something to take for granted. It's what we grow from. It's what we become. And I've bundled enough, rumbled and grumbled enough in my lifetime to know what I'm talking about. Yes. I'm still alive. I'm still thriving. And I know.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're not just alive, you're thriving. Yeah. So tell me, a guy from Detroit, Michigan. I've never been to Detroit. And it sounds like there was some canned foods, but what else? Tell me about your upbringing and your family.
Well, that was World War II. I was a little kid. I remember the opening of the cans.
Yeah.
That's your question.
Well, our generation was like TV dinners. We loved those TV dinners.
Yeah, I ran into that too.
Oh yeah, the best.
It's funny. I was just writing about that this morning in the memoir, how born in the Depression with the parents' depression. I had lost, my dad had a successful business that he lost in Depression. He lost a daughter and then a stillborn. And I was somehow got all through this, and the Depression ended right off the bat. World War II unfolded. My oldest brother was 12 years older and another older brother, 6 years older. But the older one became a P-51 pilot in World War II. And all of that stuff, just writing about it, would I stir up about specific things that really stay with me with purpose rather than judgmental. My dad was basically a 17-year-old when he went into the service to fight in World War I, and he drove an ambulance over in the war zone in France and had to pick up bodies and all of that stuff that would certainly give him very deep post-traumatic stress, which I did not realize until later when I was teaching storytelling to PTS vets after Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
So all of that stuff just comes to the surface, is how much that impacted me, the value of it. My mother, who really didn't want it, all the time she was talking about wanting to leave my dad. All this sort of stuff I was surrounded by that, and two wonderful big brothers. One, the oldest, probably would be a Trump follower. The other one was quite the extreme. And they finally had political arguments over the phone that I would be listening to. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm getting both sides here. And it's like putting in ingredients in a soup, a stew, it's just, some of the stuff just doesn't work. And my older brother's stuff did not quite work. It was blunted by something in their arguments. But at the end, they never talked to each other. And they both.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't like those stories when I hear them about families that get separated by, viewpoints, or oftentimes you hear it's over money, but it's just like blood runs thick. Like, I never understand families that sever ties. I'm sorry to hear that.
I now feel rewarded by it in an odd way, because I've been able to reflect upon it in a way, remembering my mom, which is why I probably really love women so much, is she just stuck in there and had diabetes and was under, and didn't give her enough medical prescription. So she died in the early 60s. And I was not able to go back there. I couldn't afford to fly back for that. When I was going to UCLA, and married too young, because I did not want to go to UCLA alone. I was dating a girl, and she wanted to marry rather than go.
Yeah.
It was at that time where you didn't live with a woman unless you.
Yeah. You had to put a ring on it, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you have a sense when you were a kid, let's talk maybe fifth grade, middle school age, of what you wanted to be, or who were you looking to as kind of who were your heroes?
I don't know why Orson Welles slips up there, but that's early time, and that you're talking about. Probably football, and baseball. I love. I was a baseball player and football player, and I think I couldn't get to all the Detroit Tiger baseball games I wanted to get to on the streetcar that I would have to take, and all that stuff. And I remember all this cleaning seats and all that, so I could get in for nothing. All those things were favorites of mine. I think sports was all I was exposed to. And I have to include my brother Jim, who was 6 years older than I was. But when he had to babysit me, if you don't mind my going on just a little bit about this one, because this is key to it, I realized in writing the memoir. Jim was a very sensitive guy. Dick was the older, tough guy. And when Jim babysat me, when my folks would go out, and he would get bored, so he'd play some music he wanted to play. Well, now this wasn't just ordinary music this guy played. I didn't know that I was listening to Charlie Parker, Billie Holiday, and Bud Powell, and all of a sudden Puccini and Stravinsky, and he would just play these things because that's what he was in the mood for. And then I had to share this one vision that he gave me one time, listening to Ravel's Bolero, I believe, or Stravinsky's Rites of Spring, whatever it was, stuff I did not understand, until he turned the light off in our two-family flat, and there was a street light outside that just came like a fan across the ceiling. And he says, "Look at that, Tom." And I looked up, and there were some leaves, autumn leaves blowing through it, and the wind's kind of bopping them up and moving them on. And he says, "That's life. It's all rhythm." And I looked at it differently, and I connected it, the visualness with the bum, ba-da-da-bum, ba-da-da-bum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all this stuff. And it all worked.
It was perfect.
It all worked, but I found that's what misses in some movies. This you can take certain movies that were made by a very linear filmmaker who doesn't quite get that this great music guy over here has written this one music. He's doing his work. This guy's doing his work. And to put them together, like Robert Altman, who's my man. He's the guy I mentored with almost out of college. He was a TV director. He gave me all this stuff that just was fortifying what I felt with my brother. That gave me all this stuff that
feels like a different type of flow where it just kind of works. Yeah, that makes sense.
All of that stuff and the sensibility I had about my mother, I felt. It's 3 other guys, older guys, 4 of us men, and we would piddle around the way men do. But she was doing the dishes, doing the laundry, doing all the stuff the way women do. They do what needs to be done, and I couldn't stand that. I had to do washing. I started washing for dishes for her, whatever I could do to give her a moment.
Make her life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Did you have teachers, or I guess I'm always curious about people's self-esteem as a child. Like every now and then you hear these stories of, parents who believed in people and that influenced them, or a teacher who said, like, you can do anything. Did you have anybody that stands out for you in your childhood that told you could be, Tom Skerritt, the one that we're meeting today?
Oh, no. I think best going right to that creative stuff that we had in kindergarten when the imagination first emerges and sets it apart from other animals. How they cudgel me, how they would direct me, how they would confirm this awful thing that I made that they suggested by moving it a little bit. And by looking at the miracle that this person put in front of me. And I thought, well, gee, that's not mine anymore. That's yours. And they would say, no, I could not have come to this if you hadn't done what you just did. That made me relax. And I would never know this if I hadn't started writing the memoir. But those little tiny things, they're all seeds. They all lead us to either worse things or better things. It's us that we have to make our own, not decision, but a road to follow, given something that was abstract by someone you wish you could remember, a kindergarten teacher who gave me not right or wrong or bad or good, but guided me. And it gave me a sense of self-confidence for the first time. And we know by research that if you have these programs at that time, these creative programs, that you improve in difficult classes. And it has to do with that self-confidence. All of this is what these teachers and school executives apparently understood without ever being able to verbalize it. It's how you feel.
And different today. I mean, things have changed so much.
They all came out of hardship and some from World War I and a connection up to the Depression and into winning a war, World War II. But what you get out of the ups and downs is ultimately the strength of survival.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. How do we find that? We've already had these moments, and we have to look back on all of it and not say this was worse than others. It's all the same. It's all the same playing field. It's how we
go, all connected,
how far we kick the ball.
And so what made you decide to join the Air Force? Was that just kind of what people did then, or was that something that was expected of you, or a choice?
Well, I knew I had to get away from Detroit, and I don't know why. But I think part of it was my dad was, bless his heart, he would always say that if you don't listen to me, you'll never amount to anything. A lot. That stayed with me. It bothered me because he was often angry and I was afraid of him and all that. All that kind of stuff just led up to me. I got to go. He's saying you become a carpenter, plumber. Fine. I have nothing against that. It's really a great trade. I tried it. I did not see longevity in them though. And I think creative and creativity is longevity. It's eternal. And I just somehow or another went off to California where I'd been in when I was in the service for a while.
So you went to UCLA and studied English. And how did you make that choice? Like there's all these schools, you can go pretty much anywhere. UCLA, by the way, is near impossible to get into today. So I'm guessing you had good grades?
No, it was at a time in the early 60s when you could get in if you're a resident of the state. And I went to Santa Monica City College for a year,
yeah.
then become a resident, at which point I was able to go there for $150 a year.
Oh my gosh.
And it was not overcrowded.
I mean, you studied English, I'm guessing, because you were interested in words and telling stories. But
Yeah.
How did you realize, or what was your first moment when you had an awareness that you could actually make money at it?
That never occurred to me. I could always make money. I could always survive. I knew I was going to be okay from when I was a kid. I always was concerned more about other people, my kids, my situation. All that stuff was much more important to me than celebrity. But I knew I had to be creative. I did not want to have somebody telling me what I should or should not do. I was never very good at shoulds or should nots.
Yeah.
So I had to learn on my own, which I knew I had to learn. And I still have the gift of the wonderment of what's new. And how can I open that up? How can I reveal what's new? And how does that work?
Mm-hmm. And so if you have to look back though and say, like, this was my moment when I had kind of a break, what would that be? Your first kind of big break?
I had done a little bit of acting in Detroit at Wayne State University when I was gone, and it freed me. And that was it. I never thought of being it, but I went to California. I went to this Citizen Kane, and I said, I'm going to write and direct to that level. But I knew instinctively that you have to feel what art is. To judge art, bad or good, is not the point. It either works for you or it doesn't work for you. It's open and shut from my standpoint. It's like a Mona Lisa with that little curve. That little smile.
Oh yeah. No, it is like you feel it or you don't. So it sounds like in you're thinking like the seeds and they all kind of build on each other and there's no real big break. So let me ask it maybe a little bit differently. When was the first time someone random recognized you from seeing you in something?
Oh, that. I don't know. I never thought about that. I didn't.
Well, because you don't like the celebrity part, but that part, if you don't like it, must have had its own kind of, not PTSD, but creates anxiety if you don't want it.
I don't think there's anything I didn't want. I would put it in the class that, well, that's fine. I really appreciate you complimenting me. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. I'm moving on. But to dwell on how it starts was kind of the pieces I was trying to put together with Bob Altman, how that came about, how I became an actor. I thought, well, if you're going to be an actor, you got to know what it feels like. So I thought I'm going to have to do some theater because I'm also shy and self-conscious. years ago, I could never have a conversation like this. But I'm open and frank about all this at the time. Too old to mess around with it. So I did some theater, and I get great compliments from people. And I get two guys said, "Hey, we'd like to do a little $1.88 movie." And I was in the last semester at UCLA, and I dropped out to do this little film. And I thought it's better I go into this and rather than having a teacher teaching art, I wanted to see the artists doing the work. So here I am in this movie with 3 or 4 other actors. One is Robert Redford, another is Sidney Pollack. That's where they built a relationship. And Bob and I became good friends through the 60s and into the 70s, but distance and careers and all that make a distance, enormous distance over a period of years. And and then this guy saw that film, I think, and TV director lived in the neighborhood. He says, "Come on." I worked in a few films that he was doing, but I also mentored with the guy. There was a very interesting guy, and I could learn more than just being an actor. The guy, the TV director, I was learning all that stuff from, his moans, his groans, his highs, his lows, was Robert Altman. So he calls one day and he says, "I'm doing this movie. I'd like you to be in it." So I said, "Sure." So I'm in the middle of this movie, and he's telling me that the studio hates it and all this stuff, and they're going to fire him. And I'm thinking, man, I felt something about that movie, that this is going to be an extraordinary movie that nobody in this room seems to understand. But the cast and crew were loving the time they spent with Robert Altman. That was key to it. Because invention comes out. Even the worst, as he pointed out, the worst suggestions can lead you to your goal. And you would not have gotten there if this bad suggestion hadn't come along. You know, it just, so that's where the bad and good it all comes together. One thing gives you another. And if you are open, and I was open most of my life to all this stuff and I'm still open to it, the joy of that and the joy of this film MASH being studio does not want to release it, and somehow he manages to get all these great reviews on a film. It becomes one of the 25 great films of the 20th century. And all of this was the guy that was teaching me that. And then right after that, during the opening of that, I met a guy named Hal Ashby. A dear friend, Bo Bridges, introduced us. And I think that Hal is just neat. And I just love being with that guy. So he's Academy Award-winning editor, turning director. I'm watching him. He's teaching me, and all the laughter and the sounds of the music he had playing, which was really good music in those days, because we had really good music playing in those days. So that's my beginning of really wanting to be a director.
Yeah. With
the best. Hal Ashby did Harold and Maude and Being There, and some other wonderful films while he was still alive. And just one thing after another, a Turning Point, which was a wonderful film. I don't know if you're familiar with Turning Point, but it's on LA. And all of these things I'm learning from these remarkable people I'm spending time with.
I can't even believe the names that you're throwing out there. It's the elite of the elite.
I just still can't believe all this stuff, except I was open for the best of them.
Yeah. Are there any that stand out to you as far as the roles that you played where you felt like the freest, or it just flowed, like this is a no-brainer to play this character?
God, there's a few of them. Certainly MASH was. And little things like Hal Ashby was doing at Harold and Maude. And he calls one day, he says, "Hey, this guy's playing the motorcycle. He got in an accident, broke his leg. Would you come up and fill in?" So I did. I did this cop thing. And it's not always the characters, it's the whole ambiance, the Hal. and the producer of the film, and all these laughing all the time.
Yeah.
The silliness of it. So one role over another just largely is appreciation of having all of this in my lifetime. Certainly my favorite movie of all of them that moved me the deepest is River Runs Through It. And
that movie is intense.
Yeah, but I've seen it. I don't see all the films I make, but that one moved me enough that I've seen it on several occasions, and every time it takes me to a deeper layer. And that's, I think, largely because of who I am. I see the layers in life. I can't necessarily express them any other way other than to write or act.
Right. Are there roles that you've been offered that you passed up that turned into great movies that you're like, oh, that was a mistake, or the other way around? Well, I guess that would be the question. You can't really say the roles that you took that you regret.
I don't see anything as a mistake.
It's all part of the same connection.
Yes, it is. I had signed to do a movie with Ellen Burstyn in Canada. So everything was great. I signed. I came home. A few days later, Bob Redford called and said, "Hey, would you come and do something people, the one that won the Academy Award that year.
Ordinary people? Yeah.
And when we played a Donald
Sutherland
role. And I said, God, I just signed this thing up there in Canada. I feel obligated to do that. So that was that. The other one, the one in Canada, was very poorly directed, didn't have a hope. And the Ordinary People won 4 Academy Awards, So, but that's a conversation, by the way. I don't see this as, by God, I should have done that. I just didn't. I didn't take the right.
That's a skill. I think that might be your superpower. The way that you look at the world is unique. A lot of people live in the past or in the future, and you seem to live very much in the present.
I've been through some difficult times with the paranoid schizophrenia and going home and dealing with a number of years. I didn't know whether she would be sane or not. And the kids, I couldn't afford anybody to watch the kids. And if I got something, anyway, I won't go on about that. But it caused a level of post-traumatic stress, which I now value because I understand what it is. And I see that if you can channel that, all that self-loathing and discontent with yourself into a creative avenue like discipline of writing or painting, which I'd done too, and carving and wood, all of this exhibiting yourself from everything you've experienced and finding that everything I'm doing is pretty damn good. And when I direct, I'm really good at that because it's the visual, it's the cinematography, it's the language, and it's the performance. And I understand all of that.
Yeah, how they all connect.
But it doesn't work in the business. You're either an actor and you're a director or whatever. But I don't know if that's an answer for your question.
No, it is. I mean, I'm hearing a theme for sure. And that's why, one of the questions I wanted to ask, you've got, more than staying power. You've got a true, long, incredible career in an industry that, can be fickle and can be challenging. And so is there something that you would say gives you that staying power, or you're seeing there's others who have it? Is there a common thread among those who continue to get pursued for roles, but also have the grit and the perseverance and the right kind of DNA for it?
I don't know. I don't know those answers. All I know is that I'm still trying to learn. And I watched other actors perform when I first saw that movie. Was in that first movie with Bedford and Sidney Pollack. I watched.
Oh, it's incredible.
Work. So I learned from watching those two guys work. So it's it's learning from others and never really stealing anything particularly from them. It's just the overall. They had a bad day today, or I had a bad day, and so and I collectively put it together, and here we are having a conversation about what?
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Interesting.
This is the whole loaf here.
And when you're assessing opportunities, through which lens are you looking at these opportunities? Like, how do you vet different roles or just different opportunities in business?
Staying with acting was always something I felt right out of college. I really felt that we have a responsibility to do the best work we possibly can, because this is the most influential of all media. And I held on to that one. So a lot of stuff I had to make was not particularly pleasing, but it paid the money to pay the rent, take care of feeding my children. So I was able to, this is what I see, some of the stuff I wouldn't want to see or I've made a living doing. Hey, man, you were still taking it in, the whole thing. And you were still able to feed your kids. So it was an extraordinary situation that was out of your control, and you tried to control it. You did the best you could. And all I can say is that I've tried to do the best I could at any given time. And sometimes I played roles I was just a lemon in because I just wasn't in the right environment and I wasn't playing the right character. So we won't discuss that part of it, but also, it just feeds the better stuff that you can do. And that's always in theater, stage is the real acting. Because it's film, it's, you stop and go.
When I first got you on the phone and we first started talking about your superpower, and you deflected and talked about Julie and how incredible she is, which I'm guessing she's going to listen, so that'll be good. I'm just curious how you guys met. I know you met when she was an executive at Fox and you were doing Picket Fences, is what I read.
Yes.
And so what, I guess, drew you to her initially, and what drew her to you?
Well, I don't know about her to me, but I know that I was Peter Roth was running that, the head of the television for 20th Century Fox, and she was the one that took care of things. And we'd go to lunch periodically. I'd come by and I'd wait, sitting down and wait, and she would say he'll be out when he's on the phone message, and he's got some stuff to do. He'll be out. She was always letting me know. And of course, she's quite attractive. I'm single, and she's quite interesting. And the way she dealt with her subordinates, the way she would say, we need to have this by 3:00. You're going to take care of it, right? And get it there. She would just look at them, and she gives you that unyielding, piercing eye. And you respond, but she does it with a little twinkle. Like the great painting, Mona Lisa. And I see her sometimes that way. And what's your story? So what is this? Still 27 years later.
That's amazing. Anyway, did you ask her out right away?
No, I didn't. I just thought she was interesting. One day we're at lunch with Peter, and I said, so about Julie. He says, oh, God, it bothered her. He goes on, I couldn't find the words to praise her. And so I asked her to go to, I was nominated for something, Golden Globes. And I asked her if she would go with me. And she did. And she holds her own always, still. And I just started seeing her a little bit more.
Yeah. And many years later, how incredible to be this happy this many years in.
It's always men and women. There's always going to be a conflict. There's got to be that conflict. It's understanding one another's language as much as anything. Women can get to the point a lot quicker than men can. As you notice, you get me just echoing it, going on in my head, and women can just say, enough time to just take the garbage out.
We're more net, I guess. Bottom line it, yeah.
And bottom line, every day we're dealing with stuff, and by the way, I just said me have to take the garbage out. Now that I mention it.
You're like, oh yeah, it is. It's Wednesday. Yeah. It's Wednesday. Yeah. It's garbage day. That's so funny. Well, good. That subconsciously came out. You remembered. So that's good.
Well, that's really important.
Tell me about your memoir. When's that is this like a secret? When is this coming out?
It's really been very difficult because I'm writing a very funny movie. And I have another one that I've been writing. The thesis on imagination I put aside. But I don't have a response to that.
Yeah. Well, so the screenplay, the movie that you're writing, what's that about?
Can I go on a little bit?
Of course.
I'll tell you all of this. There's a guy in the neighborhood many years ago, told you the story about he had a friend over for dinner who he hadn't seen since they were kids. Afterwards, they talked about chess. And said, gee, we always played when we were kids. I'm going to see if I still have that old chess set. So we pull it out, and a couple of pieces are missing. And he says, then I said, okay, we can't play chess, but I've always wanted to get a custom-made chess set with exotic wood and all that sort of stuff. And I can afford that. Got a guy in Alabama who made this chess set for him. And he gets this thing weeks later in the mail, and it's not his set. It's some other guy's set. And he says, oh, I'm sorry. Your set was sent to some guy in New Jersey, and you got his by mistake. Far inferior. So he tells the guy, well, you got to make an exchange. And he says, well, I don't think that's a good idea because the guy in New Jersey, he kind of likes it, and he ain't going to give it back. It had his name on the label. His name was on that. So he claimed it. And I said, well, what'd you do? He said, oh, I just told the guy he owes me a chess set, and that was it. Nothing. It stayed with me, though. What if I was just going to be going back to see my son? I went to NYU, and next week he's got a week off. I was going to go back and visit him. So, okay, I take the set with me, and I fly back, find my son, and I somehow or another managed to get in touch with these guys. How do I do it? Do I get to this particular guy? And everybody just saying, over there in New Jersey, when I go to try to find out, or anybody might know that name. Every time I ask for his name, where's this guy? I get this look. Who's asking? I was getting a lot of that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not a good idea, but because I am who I am, I'm curious enough to see what this might be. Wind up in this guy's house who had put a false name on one of his people. And turns out he runs a franchise of funeral parties.
Oh my gosh.
Which his ex-wife, who's now dead, it was her family. So he married her. He owns this 5 or 6 funeral homes. And he's got the guys in there. Ralphie is his nephew, who's his right-hand guy. He slaps around like he's his son. And it's this thing. He's suddenly there with this guy. Says, you're the guy from out there where they got the fish and the trees and all that sort of stuff. And you want to come here and take this set that belongs to me? And he goes through putting him down. But he finally says, but you got balls, mister. You come all the way back, all the way across the country here, the wagon train or something like that. Come back here. to try to get my set that's sitting here. But you got balls. I'm gonna give you a break here. I'll tell you what. Play 3 games. 2 out of 3. I'll think about it. But he's so curious, and I would be too. I want to play this out. And it's this thing that takes place over the next few days, which is very complicated, but he's so proud he's got these drive-in. Every time my character wants to make a move, interrupts him with these stupid stories about some guy I remember when as a kid throwing the tomatoes at this guy. He's walking along. He always walks like this, got a shit brown hat on his dog shit, but I shouldn't say it. Color hat on his head, and he carrying his lunch pail, and he's always kind of walking like this. And I'm trying to concentrate. And he does this all the time. He comes up to these stories after he makes a terrible move. And I see this is interesting. So I'm going to kind of stay in here. Plus, he's got his guys, Dimitri, who teaches him, gives him hand signals, which moves to make all this stuff. Anyway, it goes on over. I won't go any further because you got to see the movie.
I can't wait to see it. You have a lot going on. How are you balancing all that with, I mean, I know you and Julie started Triple Squirrels together. Super curious how you guys came up with the name.
Well, let me tell you how I came up with the name, but first I want to tell you about the company, because I could see back in the 90s that Hollywood executives were leaning towards whatever films make a lot of money. So to figure out how much more they could cut by doing
of course.
But me, I had this corny old thing about this is the most influential of all. When I go from UCLA, this is the most influential of all. Maybe we got to do the best we possibly can at telling good stories. So I felt, if you don't consider the viewers, and you're more concerned about how much more money you're going to be in trouble.
Right.
So they got into making these rubber stamp films of, special effects, and then scare the hell out of people, and bad guys shooting at people, which I felt influences a lot of little kids in high school. Get dad's gun and go shoot people. It's like target practice for them psychologically. And fun. They get to shoot these guns and somebody falls.
Right.
It's small stuff. We got to remember this. So it's that kind of thing of how I came to the business. Was I realized that Hollywood was going to be in trouble. I don't know when.
Right.
Tank. Because then he got rubber stamping too much, the same stories. Special effects were not new. They were just remodified. And I started 6 years ago with trying to put something together where we could make our own stuff for not much money and distribute it. I didn't know how we were going to have revenue at that point. It was a few years ago. Things have changed immensely now, but Triple Squirrels came as a result of 2 years ago of we just having a conversation with one of our officers saying, well, my background was Galway Bay as far as I know, and that was on my coat of arms. They had 3 squirrels on it, and in Latin it's underneath it says first and last in battle. I'm talking. I said, "Oh, what about Triple Squirrels?"
It's definitely memorable. Like stands out. Interesting. Yeah. So it's a result of trying to make more authentic, kind of for the audience, meaningful films, as opposed to trying to do the whole Hollywood blockbuster.
Never mind that. It's a lot of money, and that they put into that. We can make money, and I've always felt we don't need that all. You guys are expanding the budgets because you all can make a little more cut out of it. That didn't work for me somehow. It just didn't sit right. And I understand their point of view. They all get together and have a cup of tea and conversations. And one's a favorite. Making more money is not a bad thing to talk about. But I just felt the morality was to tell good stories well, and you didn't have to spend a lot of money. So that came to a point where what we're doing is collecting a lot of short films that have not had exhibition in one way or another, have not been seen, that are available on shelves, or films that have been on PPS, very interesting films that have played and are owned by, in this case, a woman we know who, the film was called Great Girl, Female Bands, Girls in a Band, about girls back in the 50s in these great bands. Point is, I'm getting at, was that everything had to be uplifting. No sad, tragic stuff about poor me or, boy, it's too bad, I'm going to die, and all this sort of stuff. No, and not in COVID or any time. Uplifting good stories about Dale Shahuti, a glassmaker, in his first days. Documentary on that. Great fishing rivers from Idaho to the Pacific Ocean. Chefs in the woods that we find out here. Number one pizza maker, because of the dough crust, particular crust, is a guy, a little place at a little shop by the ferry landing up in Kingston.
So these all Pacific Northwest stories?
All Pacific, but those are, we have a little bit of money. Those we're shooting ourselves, so we have ownership. The rest of these released for 2 years, and it's ad-based, which is the point I'm getting.
So that's the business model. That's how the company makes money.
50 on the advertising. So it takes a couple of years to even get anybody to notice we're even on all the streaming channels going on.
Yeah.
A lot of dumpy stuff.
All sorts of stuff going. And so what are the growth plans for that you and Julie have for the business?
Well, the growth plan begins with, first of all, we are able to get on Stir app, which is owned by Sinclair Broadcasting. And we have a channel, we name the channel an Evergreen, EVRGRN, cutting the vowels out. And so we have the Evergreen channel on Stir app. And now we've expanded to, I think, 7 or 8 other platforms with whom we share. And then we share the advertising if they're getting on these 7 or 8 different platforms around the country. And us more up to possibly 10 million people viewing. So it's this gradual growth that we have to get into. We don't just jump into it because we can expand, make a lot of money. We will make the money, and we'll have established a company that's really, in and of itself, has value for someone else to come along and buy it.
Definitely. And is there, I guess, a measure? People look at data so much now to tell stories through technology. Stories, not storytelling, but to tell the story of the business. What types of metrics, if any, are you guys using to measure the success of the business?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm a creative in this.
Well, I saw that. I'm like, you're the chief creative officer, and I'm not a creative person. So I'm curious what you do as far as your job relative to what Julie's job is. She's
the CEO, and I just stay out of the way. She knows all this stuff. She just knows she's my fairy godmother. I don't know, how else to describe her. Very quiet, very straightforward. I can't get her to laugh sometimes.
But the chief creative officer, as far as your role, you're getting behind and discovering and kind of driving some of the projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, particularly the ones we're making. She agrees with my creative silliness in some case, but like I have to blame Altman and Ashby and a few other guys, along the way that have made some wonderful films.
Yeah,
a lot of fun and absurd. I love absurdity, but you got to get your smarts around that. This is going on too long, kind of thing, and and then you realize you should cut here. You keep it going. And you get real laughter then.
Yes. Well, you guys sound like you're a great pair, and I'm excited to continue to watch the success and watch some of your films. And getting prepared for the podcast, I got really excited. I gave myself a whole list of things I want to want to check out. And your website's awesome. I mean, I don't know what role you played in that, but it's very good, cool, creative vibes. It's really cool.
If
I
you
loved
could get
it.
in touch with Julie, she could give you all the platforms it's on right now.
Yeah.
I can't tell the mechanics.
Yeah, I'll have to ask her too. Well, you're the creative. You don't have to worry about that. Just like you get out of her way. You got to know your lane. And it sounds like you do. So tell me about your weekends when you're not working. What's your idea of kind of the perfect weekend by yourself? If you were just by yourself and you were given 48 hours, what would you want to do?
Walk in the woods. I want to, which I do. My daughter lives on Vashon Island and with her children, and she just made me a great grandpa. And she lives in the woods on Vashon Island. And when I go over there, I like to walk the paths. I just like to feel the smell, the air. I just love the rhythms of nature.
Yeah, I love it. And what do you do? We talked a little bit about kind of eating and wellness and not eating, eating like fresh vegetables and stuff. What do you do physically and for your body? And what do you do for your mental health? We've come out of this pandemic, and I think we're only going to start to see what impact that's had. Do you create space for your mental health?
I'm working on that because I'm at an age where I forget, words and names of people. And I have to keep it working as much as I possibly can. And a lot of this is everything we're talking about now. And I don't think I could talk about this if I didn't really work on it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a walk and pushing myself. And Julie's forever saying, never mind that you don't have a parachute. You have one somewhere. I'll grab you and I'll pick you up before you hit the ground if that's your concern. But she does push me in the right direction. And I just sometimes as the ego comes up and I said, leave me alone. I don't say that, but I feel just give me a break between all the stuff you're telling me, showing me what to do, these brain games. I should be.
I think it's important. I mean, I'm only 50 and I already sense, forgetting certain things or losing the word I'm looking for. And then I can't speak as quickly as my brain is working. Like I can't access the word that I'm looking for. So yeah, I need to be doing it too. I've been doing some like word games, and I think there's something to all of that. So I think, we should all listen to Julie. She should send me what to do also.
You will remember everything, every finger that you pointed, left hand, right hand. She's remarkable. She's really remarkable. And I don't really have, as men do, the ego that I once had as a kid, as an athlete, and all that stuff that is in the business that I'm in, and a lot of ego.
Yeah.
That happens.
Well, you're also, I mean, maybe Julie will be upset with me for saying this, but you're ridiculously handsome. That comes with some ego too. Like they don't make you look like like fake, almost like too handsome. It's unbelievable to me. And you still look so good. It's crazy, like that head of hair. You look great. You're blushing. You look.
Say that.
You look great. Tell Julie.
I look in the mirror when I'm brushing my hair this morning. I said, "Man, you're getting to look old."
No,
I said, "Well, okay, that's the way it is. We all live and die."
Yeah,
that's the open and shut of it.
We can't slow down time. Yeah. Okay. So my final question for you, and thank you again for being on the podcast, is what fuels you? What's your ultimate fuel? Gets you out of bed in the morning? You can't say Julie, by the way.
Just being alive. There's some mornings I get up and I just don't think I'm going to make it through the day, and I just have to push myself. And Julie will not allow it. And I mean, for me to behave that way, she'll kick me in the ass.
Yeah.
One way or another. And
Yeah.
Just
I
being
appreciate
alive.
that. That's the gratitude. They say, that's a great answer because they do say that gratitude like that, just gratitude for being able to take another breath and walk another step, is the true, if you can access that, it's the true way to access joy and happiness.
It really is the truth of the matter, right down the heart of it, for all of us to have that sense of we don't live in Ukraine, we don't live in Russia. We live here and we in this place, which has got the sun's out. It's got a gorgeous view of Mount Rainier in the distance, and the water's down there, and occasionally I see an otter come up. What the hell?
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.